During the Clone War, there was perhaps no individual more feared throughout the galaxy than the Supreme Commander of the Separatist droid army, General Grievous. In roughly 3 years of fighting across the galaxy, Grievous not only led the Separatists to countless victories against the Republic, but he terrorized his enemies by bringing death and destruction to entire planets. However, Grievous was not simply a devastating battlefield commander, as he was considered to be one of the greatest Jedi hunters, not just throughout the Clone War, but in the entire history of the galaxy. But how did Grievous, as a non-force sensitive cyborg, become such a talented lightsaber duelist, capable of defeating Jedi who spent their entire lives training in lightsaber combat? In this video expose, I will answer this question by looking at the physical augmentations made to the cyborg, his intensive training under one of the greatest lightsaber instructors of his era, and explaining why his lack of force sensitivity was not fatal when dueling against the Jedi. As important as Grievous's lightsaber training was, his capabilities with a blade would be far inferior were it not for the cybernetic enhancements made by the Geonosian scientists tasked with rebuilding the Kaleesh warrior for warfare. Thanks to his cybernetics, Grievous was the perfect combination of speed and strength, which could assist in overwhelming most Jedi physically, neutralizing their force-based advantages. Due to Grievous's crystal circuitry and the implementation of 4 appendages, the cyborg had the ability to not only arm himself with 4 lightsabers, but to strike with astonishing speed and lightning-fast flurries. Given that each arm could spin up to 360 degrees, the Separatist general could strike as much as 20 times per second, and faster than the human eye could anticipate. Clearly, this would inundate the defenses of his Jedi enemies. The cybernetics of Grievous also gave him the ability to tower over most of the Jedi he confronted, allowing not just for the important element of intimidation, but also providing Grievous with the ability to utilize power strikes, thanks to his brute strength. As Mace Windu, one of the greatest lightsaber duelists in the history of the Jedi Order, recognized during his duel with Grievous in the Battle of Coruscant, the cyborg's strikes were as forceful as any he'd ever encountered. This combination of speed and strength, coupled with the fact that Grievous's cybernetics were fashioned out of lightsaber-resistant uranium, ensured that his Jedi opponents were placed on the defensive, forced to defend against Grievous's lightsaber strikes with little opportunity to utilize the Force for offense. Perhaps even more important than his physical abilities were the augmentations made to Grievous's mind, increasing his mental and analytical capabilities. Thanks again to the scientists of Geonosis, Grievous's brain was outfitted with microcomputers that directly boosted his abilities in lightsaber combat against the Jedi. These computers could fully analyze the combat style of his opponent, and then allow Grievous to not just alter his stance, posture, and strategy, but also the angle of his parries and strikes to best meet the attack of his opponent, and then counterattack most effectively. The significance of Grievous's analytical and mental augmentations were seen again in his duel with Mace on Coruscant. The advanced combat algorithms in Grievous's brain allowed him to not only meet the demands of Mace's powerful Vapad style of combat, but to also counter it with a style that very closely mimicked Mace's style, despite the cyborg's lack of force sensitivity. It should also be mentioned that Grievous's brain was programmed in all 7 classic forms of lightsaber dueling. Although this wouldn't prevent Grievous from being countered through unpredictability, it did make Grievous acutely familiar with all of the traditional forms of his opponents. Grievous also significantly benefited from having been directly trained by the Sith Lord Dooku in the art of lightsaber combat. Immediately following his transformation on Geonosis and the acquisition of his new cybernetics, Grievous underwent extensive combat training sessions with Dooku, which continued right up until the final days of the Clone War. Having Dooku as his personal instructor and trainer cannot be taken as a simple point. By the time Dooku left the Jedi Order, roughly 10 years before the start of the Clone War, Dooku was regarded as one of the greatest swordsmen in the galaxy, perhaps being surpassed only by Yoda and Mace. Dooku's Makashi style was tailored to excel in lightsaber-to-lightsaber combat, giving him a significant advantage to all other Jedi within the Order. The vast majority of Jedi chose other forms, having thought the style was irrelevant in an era in which the Sith were believed to be extinct. But it wasn't just Dooku's skill as a duelist that's important here. When Dooku left the Order, he was also a highly regarded lightsaber instructor, one of the most respected and renowned instructors in the entire Order. Dooku and his decades of experience in training Jedi in lightsaber combat would have facilitated a quick learning curve in Grievous's lightsaber abilities. In fact, it was Dooku who perfectly understood the lightsaber combat forms utilized by the Jedi, who developed a personalized, unorthodox fighting form for Grievous. This form was one that utilized the cyborg's ability to engage in prolonged sequence power moves combined with lightning-fast flurries, which would overwhelm his Jedi opponents thanks to his cybernetic enhancements. Therefore, Dooku's tutelage had a profoundly significant and positive impact on transforming Grievous into a devastating lightsaber duelist who could easily match the skill embodied by most Jedi. Through the combination of skill incorporated by Dooku and the powerful physical and mental augmentations incorporated by the scientists of Geonosis, many Jedi simply were unable to compete with the cyborg in a lightsaber duel. Finally, and perhaps the most important aspect to consider, is why Grievous was able to achieve such great success against Jedi, even some who achieved the rank of Master, despite the fact that he wasn't Force sensitive. First, it shouldn't be too surprising that a non-Force sensitive being could hold their own in a battle against the Jedi, and even defeat them. For example, Jango Fett alone killed 6 Jedi himself during the Battle of Galadron, so it has been established in the Star Wars universe that Force sensitivity is not the be-all and end-all in terms of combat, and Jedi were susceptible to falling to non-Force sensitive foes. Grievous, of course, was clearly vulnerable to Force attacks from Jedi. As seen within the Canon comic series, and also within the Legends novel Labyrinth of Evil, Grievous was susceptible to the Force push attacks of Jedi Masters Deepa Billaba in the former work and Mace within the latter. But do we have a good answer for why Jedi simply didn't use constant Force attacks against Grievous to emerge victorious, or why a non-Force sensitive being could defeat a Force sensitive Jedi in lightsaber combat? I believe we do, with a great answer being developed in the novel Darth Bane Path of Destruction. During a lightsaber lesson being taught to Darth Bane, then a new student to the Sith Academy on Korriban, by one of the leading swordsmen in the entire galaxy, the Sith Blade Master Kasim, we saw a great description of the deciding factors in lightsaber combat. As Kasim informed Bane, the equation of Force sensitivity versus non-Force sensitivity in a duel was not a simple one. While the Force was clearly important, it was recognized by Kasim that someone who was well trained in lightsaber combat could defeat an opponent who was stronger in the Force. The reason for this was simple. The more options a duelist had available to them, the more difficult it was for their Force-sensitive foe to predict and anticipate which would be forthcoming. Grievous's physical and mental augmentations, as well as the skill imparted by Dooku in all 7 forms of lightsaber combat, provided him with a significant amount of options. This would have forced his Jedi opponents to focus their Force abilities on predicting where exactly Grievous's strikes would land next. But more than that, another important lesson is displayed in the novel Path of Destruction. Augmenting one's physical prowess through the Force and anticipating an opponent's moves required a significant amount of energy and concentration. Due to Grievous's ability to strike with lightning-fast flurries, upwards of 20 strikes per second, and forceful strikes stemming from his brute strength, there's no doubt that the cyborg's Jedi opponents would have had to use the Force not to attack, but to augment their own physical abilities to match Grievous, and also to anticipate his attacks. With Grievous's overwhelming nature when engaged in lightsaber combat, Jedi would typically be suffocated, wherein they would have to focus their energy on defense and with little opportunity to use the Force for offense. Eventually, as Bane experienced firsthand at the Sith Academy, fatigue would set in for the Force user, as even the Force couldn't augment their abilities forever. At this point, Grievous and his never-tiring cybernetics would then prey upon his Jedi foe. So there we have it, how Grievous became a devastating lightsaber duelist capable of defeating Jedi Masters. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions. Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. Or perhaps follow us on Twitter, @SW Reading Club, for updates regarding the channel. Or support the channel through Patreon for access to exclusive hangouts and book discussions. If not for me, I guess that works too.